Hello and welcome to my review of the Audi A4 Avant. This is the new model for 2016 and I got one of the first ones that came on the roads in Belgium. I've seen a number of professional reviews of this car and of many others, and I think it's interesting to see a real owner's perspective, because I think my needs and expectations are different from those of the journalists and racing drivers who tend to do the professional reviews. They also tend to drive very high-end models with lots of options, which most of us won't have in real life. I'm going to split my review into several videos to keep each of them to a reasonable length. This is the main review, and currently I plan to produce 3 or 4 other videos. One will look at the options that I took on my car, highlighting in particular some features that you will see on the professional reviews, but which don't come as standard. I'll also take a deeper look at the multimedia interface and the virtual cockpit, showing you most of the features you can access via the driver's interfaces. Finally, I'll look at some of the practical features in the boot space, particularly as I took the boot space management option, which I won't discuss in great depth here, but which might be interesting for some prospective owners, especially as the A4 has the largest boot in its class, and so that could be one of the main reasons for choosing it. My previous car was an Alfa Romeo Giulietta, which is a 5-door hatchback similar to the VW Golf, BMW 1 Series or Audi A3. It's a nice car and I didn't have any problems with it, but it was coming up to 5 years old and I fancied a change. We have 2 dogs now, and even though they aren't very big, the Alfa doesn't have enough room for both of them in the boot. So one of my criteria was a bigger boot. I also wanted my new car to feel like a definite step up in luxury. My Giulietta didn't really have any modern touches like a colour screen. Finally, we wanted an automatic. Nowadays, automatic gearboxes are faster, smoother and more economical than manual gearboxes, and I think that manual cars are a thing of the past. I looked at cars from all of the main brands. I have no brand loyalty with cars and have rarely had more than one car from a single manufacturer. I've previously had cars from Vauxhall, Peugeot, Renault, Ford, Audi, BMW, VW and of course Alfa Romeo. Mostly company cars and sometimes not of my choice. I had an Audi A4 around 2000, but that was several generations ago and had little to do with the current model. Actually, when I started looking, I was expecting to get a BMW, so the Audi wasn't my initial choice. I chose the A4 mainly because it has the space we need, the interior is very classy, and it is very good to drive. As it's a new model, it also has some of the latest technology, both in visible aspects like the interface, connectivity and gadgets, and hidden aspects like its excellent safety features. I didn't take all of the options, so it doesn't have some of the gadgets like blind spot assistance. I added around 11,000 euros of options, but you have to stop somewhere. The other car that I liked a lot was the Range Rover Evoque, but its boot was too small for our purposes. I took delivery of my A4 Avant towards the end of January 2016, 2 days before I was due to drive from Belgium to Italy for a ski holiday. A 2,000 kilometre round trip that would be a great opportunity to run the car in and give it a good test, as well as working out how to use all of its features. Since we would be driving in the Alps, I asked Audi to fit Michelin cross-climate tyres to the car before I took delivery of it. As there was no snow on the roads during our ski trip though, we didn't really get a chance to test the tyres out in wintry conditions. So what do I like and dislike about my new Audi? First of all, I like the way it drives. I picked the 2-litre TFSI petrol engine, giving 190 horsepower. My annual mileage is not very high, and with the recent emissions scandal, I thought that a petrol engine was the better choice for me. We test drove a previous generation A4 with a 150 horsepower engine, and I felt that wasn't particularly lively, so I went up a step to the 190 horsepower engine. It's timed at 7.5 seconds to 100 km per hour, and that gives it enough power for things like overtaking on the motorway. The engine itself is extremely quiet and refined. You barely hear it unless you're accelerating hard, Cruising on the motorway, you hear more wind and tyre noise than engine noise, and the Michelins are relatively quiet for a winter tyre. The gear changes are barely noticeable unless you accelerate hard. I find it a very easy and relaxing car to drive, less tiring on the long journeys than any of the other cars that we've driven for our ski trips, which was an unexpected benefit. This is also partly due to the seats. We took the electric sports seats, finished in leather and Alcantara, with a memory function, since my girlfriend and I both drive the car, and we were rather tired of having to adjust the seat manually almost every time we drove it. The seats give you plenty of options to get a really comfortable driving position, including lumbar support in this configuration, and they were great for our long journeys. The suspension is also good, noticeably smoother than my Alfa Romeo, even without the optional upgrade. The only problem with all of this refinement is that you barely notice your speed of travel, and it's very easy to exceed the speed limits in a car like this. Although I didn't take some of the options like the speed limit recognition system or the adaptive cruise control, we used the basic cruise control at times to ensure that we weren't breaking the law, particularly at times like when we were passing through some of the long alpine tunnels. It's worth noting that the sat-nav system doesn't warn you about speed cameras, although the speed limit is displayed. The interior of the new A4 is superb. This really is one of their main strong points. I took the options of the virtual cockpit and the advanced MMI system in order to have the latest in technology. The virtual cockpit is the screen that replaces the gauges in front of the steering wheel, and the advanced MMI gives you a larger screen in the middle, as well as some other upgrades like the touch-sensitive top of the joystick. This comes along with an upgraded steering wheel with controls that essentially duplicate the controls in the middle of the car by the gear stick. The virtual cockpit itself is magnificent, with a number of display options giving you everything you need to see right in front of you. Once you get used to the controls, it's easy to manipulate and beautifully clear. However, it can be quite distracting looking at the information there instead of focusing on the road. One criticism is that there is actually quite a lot of duplication between the two displays, and it makes them feel a little bit redundant to me. The Audi TT only has the virtual cockpit with no central display, and for the driver that's really all you need. The central screen is perhaps more for the front passenger to fiddle with. Incidentally, we also test drove a car with the traditional gauges and a smaller colour screen between them, which is the medium option, and I thought that worked very well too, so you shouldn't feel obliged to get the virtual cockpit. I do, however, like the touch-sensitive joystick, which you don't get with the basic MMI system, and I found it was rather laborious to enter things like place names in the navigation system without that. I'll go into more detail on the interface screens in a separate video, showing all of the different displays and options that you can access. There's also a voice control option activated by a button on the steering wheel, which could be useful, although it's a bit slow to respond, and so far I haven't really found it all that useful. All new A4s include drive select options, which let you choose between eco, comfort or dynamic modes for more or less economy or performance. I don't find this makes a huge difference to the drive, but my personal preference is for an individual setting with the comfort setting on the engine and dynamic steering to reduce the amount that you have to turn the steering wheel. In the roof above the central screen, you have controls for the interior lighting and also buttons to call the emergency services and the Audi support centre in case of an accident or breakdown. At least those come with one of the options. Audi provides 3 years of roadside assistance, which can be directly contacted via this button, which is a great feature, although I imagine the details may differ according to your country and the package that you buy. I presume that this can be extended past the 3 years too. If you have a sunroof or the HomeLink automatic garage door opener, the controls for these are here too. Back down on the console we have the air conditioning system. I took the basic system rather than the tri-zone upgrade with the fancy buttons, since we rarely have backseat passengers. The only slight disappointment with that is that you can only change the temperature settings by whole degree increments. Otherwise it's fine. Below that are a number of buttons for certain features like the drive select, the start-stop function, the traction control and the parking systems. I took the rear view camera and the automatic parking system with front and rear sensors. The sensors are a necessity and the rear view camera is brilliant. I find it extremely helpful when I'm parking the car, and it's quickly become the first place that I look. The automatic parking is a cool feature, but I'm not bad at parking and I tend to find it quicker and easier to park the car myself. Hidden away in the glove compartment are a disc player for CDs and DVDs, together with slots for 2 SD cards and a SIM card. I believe that the SD card slots are an option that come with the MMI navigation system. We have 2 separate SD cards with music for myself and my girlfriend, and so when we get into the car we can simply select the appropriate SD card and then we have our own music. The SIM slot is for a data connection, and I have a data SIM in there which allows the car to do things like downloading Google Earth Maps, downloading updates, and connecting to the Audi Connect services and the My Audi website for doing things like downloading routes that you've prepared earlier on your computer. I'm not yet convinced that this is a real necessity for me, but it could be very useful for people who travel around a lot to new places and want to find local information. For example, you can get up-to-date information on flights, including flights that are landing at a nearby airport, together with real-time landing information. Back in the centre, under the armrest, you'll find a USB slot and a 3.5mm aux-in jack connection. I took a pack with the Audi phone box, which includes wireless phone charging, and that's really handy. I can just slip my phone under the armrest and it will happily charge away while I'm driving along, without having to mess around with cables and plugs and things. The car even warns you if you leave your phone in there when you get out. Moving towards the rear of the car, I don't have much to say about the rear seats, except that they're pretty comfortable and there's plenty of head and leg room. They fold down in 3 parts, with levers both on the top of the seats and in the boot. When they're folded down, there's a lot of space in the back. My skis fitted in comfortably lengthwise without putting them diagonally, and we had a lot of luggage in there without restricting the excellent view through the rear window. The Avant comes with an automatically raising boot cover, which I've taken out at the moment, and a protective boot net as standard. The net fixes easily into holes towards the roof, and you can also install it when the seats are folded down. Since we have dogs, I bought a separate boot protector, which with Velcro fastenings that happily fix onto the boot sides without having to stick something else on. There are good lights and hooks for bags, as well as the levers to fold the seats down, and the boot floor above the spare wheel is reversible with a plastic surface underneath, which is quite practical. I have the optional boot space management kit, which is stored under there, but I'll cover that in another video. The boot opens and closes automatically, which may be an option depending on where you are, and you can adjust the height to which it opens, for instance if you have a low garage ceiling. Quickly looking at the outside of the car, I took the standard 16-inch wheels, but I upgraded the window surrounds and the roof bars to the aluminium look from the standard black. I also opted for the standard headlights, which I think are sufficient for me, although they lack some of the features that you might have seen on some of the reviews, such as the selective headlight dimming. I didn't realise that this meant I wouldn't have the sexy progressive LED indicator lights, but given the cost of the upgraded lights, I don't think that would have changed my mind. I did take the high beam assistance, which automatically dips the main beam lights when it detects cars ahead of you, and that works well. So what don't I like about my new car? Well, for the price, you'd hope that there wasn't much that disappoints me, and that is the case. I was slightly disappointed at the lack of a couple of minor things that I hadn't realised were options, or were linked to options, like the LED indicators and the rimless rearview mirror. I have also found that there are some things that I'd like to do in the MMI interface but which I can't. For example, I'd like to program 2 of the shortcut keys to select the different SD cards. You also can't program more than 1 stopover in the navigation system, so you can't set up a complex route. And the MMI interface takes a bit of getting used to, as it's not always obvious where to find something. The last point relates more to my Audi dealer than the car. They were not very good at communicating after I had ordered the car, and I had to chase them for the delivery date and to get the papers for the insurance company, which I thought was poor service for a premium brand. These are fairly minor niggles though, and overall I'm very happy with my car. I can certainly recommend it if you're in the market for a new car and want something that is stylish without being ostentatious, comfortable and easy to drive, and very practical too. You do have to be very careful with the option list, particularly if you've been seduced by the sexy features that you've seen on other reviews, as they are both extensive and expensive. I added 11,000 euros of options to my car, and I could have easily added another 10,000 or more. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have any questions that I haven't covered, please comment below and I'll try to answer them. And look out for my other videos on specific aspects of this car.